Actually, I was born back in the former Soviet Union. Moved to the United States when I was 14 years old. Enlisted into Marines after high school, and then got into IT. So I was a network engineer at heart. So I started my career as a network engineer. I have a couple of Cisco certifications throughout my career. I worked in I see some smirks. Anyways, lightweight. Yeah. Worked in a data center most of my career. So different data center, mostly in financial sector, and worked as a solutions architect in a bar space. Just recently, and the reason you see the IO fit right here, and you probably never heard of it before, is because it's brand new. So this is my own consulting company that I'm starting, 2 months old, and we do everything infrastructure-wise. So not just security, anything infrastructure, networking, compute, including security as well. So anyways, that's a little bit about myself. Do you guys want to go, or do I just jump straight into it? All right, great.
Jump straight into it.
IO fit an acronym? It is. It's sort of an acronym. So IE is a portion of usually people like CCIE are called IEs, so inter-network experts. So IE of infrastructure technology. So that's it. IE of IT, iofit.com. So as a matter of fact, we'll see something on there. And the first thing we're going to start with is I'm going to show a little video. And when Don first asked me to speak, he said, make it interactive. Make it to where I'm just not sitting here and talking to myself the whole time, and bring you guys in. So, and I'm thinking this is cybersecurity group in the bar with drinks. So the first thing that pops into my mind is the scene from The Social Network, if you guys ever seen it, when they bring in the interns and they're trying to, vet them out, and they're trying to get, like, they have 4 workstations set up facing each other, and they say, you got to get root access to this Linux box, and every 10 lines of code you write, you take a shot. Every 10 minutes goes by, you take a shot. Every time you trip any kind of alarm, you take a shot. So I'm thinking, we got to do this. And then and then I backed off of that idea a little bit, just because I know that some of you, especially the gentleman in the back there, would be very interested into something like that. Most of you probably just be taking shots the whole time and we wouldn't get anywhere. So what we've done instead is I build a little. So if you ever done any kind of what is it, Kahoot? So it's kind of a rip-off of that. So we'll do that in a second. But before that, I'm going to play a little video that has to do something to do with security. And then we're going to pretty much have a quiz on that through that application. So pay attention. There might be some questions. That's my first interactions. I'll try not to quiz you the whole time you're here. I know you're not here to answer questions. You had drinks and all that. So we'll start from this point and we'll see how it goes.
How did you decide to become a hacker?
Well, I'm not really sure what it means to become a hacker. That's like some guy in a hoodie who types really fast and stays up all night writing code and cracking passwords. It's not me. I just spy on people and see what makes them click. It's not a bad job.
Mark Hanning, CEO of Qualicard, set to report earnings after their blockbuster IPO.
So you consider this a job?
I put a lot of work into this. I'm not lazy. It takes research to figure out the key players, learn all about them, their families, their friends, what they care about. You have to understand the company's organization. I get a lot of my information from the sales department because they're always so quick and eager. They're hungry. People trust too easily. They don't look at the details. I do. Details matter. That's what I'm good at. It has to look completely believable. It has to look familiar. This is where research is important. It's not some generic piece of spam. It's an email from their boss with their company signature. It's written in the voice of the boss. It's what he would say if he were writing this.
What about the malware itself? How does that work?
Somebody else out there already wrote all the code that does the actual attack. I'm just using it in the attachment. My skill is in my ability to get a bunch of people to click on that attachment. I always wonder what it's like when the whole thing unfolds on their end. When the panic sets in.
Please leave your message after the beep.
Hey, this is Rajiv in finance. Call me as soon as you get this. Something's up with my laptop. Are you on your way to the office? Something's going on with our file service.
Karen in HR, our benefits dashboard seems really slow. We're getting calls from users on it. Call and get this. Joining conference now.
Apparently, there's a malware attack targeting our main.
It's ransomware. They're holding us hostage. We're locked out of everything. I can't even check my phone. What about the backup?
That will take days.
We need this fixed now. Just pay it. We don't have a choice. We're reporting earnings in 2 hours.
But how do we know
Just
that they'll...
pay it. Put every single person on getting us back up and running. That's the only priority now. Okay, it's done. I have the decrypt key. Mark, we have a big problem. The ransomware was just to distract us. They got inside. They got everything. Customer data, financials, everything.
Qualicards is reeling today from the news that hackers have released the personal information of nearly
The
2
Nasdaq
million
closed lower today, led by Qualicards, which was down 14% on news that their recent data breach may be far worse than the company
Its stock
originally
fell to a new all-time low on news that CEO Mark Hannon is stepping down after what is turning out to be one of the worst breaches of personal information in recent history.
Do you feel bad about releasing the personal information? All the financials? All the money that was lost?
All I did was get the files. I'm not the one that decided to release them. I'm not the one that shorted the stock. Somebody else had their reasons for that. It's above my pay grade. I was paid to do a job, and I did it well. And that's what's expected of anyone, isn't it? Anyway, markets bounce back.
All right, so I hope you guys paid attention. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna test it. So if you got a cell phone or a computer or whatever, go to overflow.com/play. You download a little app, you say accept, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, just put in your credit card and anyways, that was my interaction for the beginning. Just that was a nice icebreaker. We'll resume that later on as we go along. Anyway, so let's get started with security architecture. So the one thing that I want to emphasize on is there's a lot of things, and as you can see on there, there's a lot of things in the security agendas tool belt that you can implement. So back in the day, you had for example a firewall that you put in between where potential attackers are, or where your data is, and the way that you prevent people from getting in and accessing services that are exposed in different systems from internet or from wherever else. You put a firewall in. That was essentially the base of security. But now in a infrastructure world, there is a lot more to it, and I want to emphasize on different areas of it. So the way that you treat security in data center is a lot different than the way you treat it in the cloud, for example. There's the endpoint security, which is obviously every laptop out there and every other system or machine or what have you. You can install different clients or different agents on it that monitors different behaviors, analyzes and detects anomalies on that system. You usually wouldn't do it on a server, you would do it on a client. So again, it's different the way that you treat security in there. Network access control, who has access to my network? Obviously, in the wireless world, it's obvious. You got your network access, which is your, it should never be a pre-shared key in the infrastructure or in the enterprise space, but it is so when you're at your house. So when you have a pre-shared key at your house, sometimes if you have a corporate issued laptop, it's easier for me to hack it when it's at your house, and I just go and do it over there. So just because the wireless or other network access is solidified doesn't mean the hacker will try to attack the strongest point of security. Often they'll see where's the weakest link, and then when you architect security, you always have to think about that it's not just about securing my infrastructure right here. It's where else can it be where else can it be penetrated, and how do I prevent that from happening? So we'll see a lot of that, a lot of examples of that as well. Application-specific security. So that's probably where most of you guys that's in a cybersecurity group actually live, but that's a small piece of the overall security architecture in the infrastructure space. And then there is the anomaly detection. So anyways, I'm trying to show this slide to show that there is different ways that you can look at it. And me coming in from the infrastructure space, I'm going to give you just a different way to look at security that might be kind of the outside of the box view of it. So let's continue. You guys are welcome to dispute this or debate me on this, but from my observation, all the security mitigation techniques that are out there is usually a knee-jerk reaction to a breach of some sort. So again, when you have a firewall, it's because somebody got on the system and did something to some ports that are open that didn't mean to be open out to the outside world. When you have endpoint encryptions because somebody lost a laptop and somebody downloaded some sensitive data from it. When you have network access, it's because when somebody came in and plug into the network and they're able to do maybe a layer 2 man-in-the-middle attack or something like that. So then you have the dynamic ARC inspection and port security and other mitigations that came out of that. So every single thing that usually happens in the security mitigation techniques is usually a knee-jerk reaction from something that happened in the past. And there's a good news about it and bad news is because something like that already happened, you're usually preventing. A lot of hackers, they're not inventing new things, they're just trying to figure out how to use the things that know works, maybe in a different way or in a different order, or just group them in a different fashion, but they're all kind of similar. Every now and then you hear of the zero-day attacks and all that, but again, it's all the zero-day attacks is usually some kind of buffer overflow and something that developer did not think to account for. So that's essentially the problem with security, and that's when you architect it, you have to kind of realize, what am I architecting my security for? What am I trying to protect? Is everything even worth protecting? Because security is very, very expensive. Dollar-wise, money, dollar-wise, time-wise, complexity-wise, it all adds cost to an enterprise. So sometimes it's cheaper or more effective to have less security in certain areas because that's not important for you to protect. And that's often a lot of CIOs out there usually have to make those decisions on a daily basis, because nobody can be secure 100%. Nobody can just say secure everything. I mean, a lot of times it doesn't mean, when somebody comes to me and says, I want everything to be secure, that usually means that they don't know what they're talking about. They need to kind of take different areas that they want to focus on. So let's look at some of the different security breaches and tactics. So before you can architect against it, because all the security measures are an answer to some kind of a breach or tactic of security vulnerability, we have to understand what they are, at least the major ones. So let's look at some of them. The biggest one, and we see it before, is phishing. So what is phishing? Phishing is not even a technical attack. Most of the time, as we saw the lady in the video, she didn't look technical in that sense. All phishing is, and if you think about something like that, this is genius. Everybody's got Netflix. As a matter of fact, if a hacker was smart enough to send this to my wife and drive by my house and then maybe do some kind of wireless denial of service on my Wi-Fi right before that, at 5:30 at night or 6 or 7 or whatever, whenever he thinks we're watching Netflix, and my wife turns on the TV and it doesn't come on, and then she gets this email. Well, hopefully she doesn't click on it because it says Jon Snow, and her name's not Jon Snow. But if she sees that, chances are she's going to click on it and try to figure out what's going on with the Netflix account. So again, and why is that important to anything when it comes to infrastructure security and all that, or enterprise security? Is a lot of the times you'll use the same username and password in your Netflix accounts as you will use somewhere else, especially. And I'm a big advocate of not making the passwords that they are today. So a lot of times, your password policy will be an upper, a lower, a special character, at least 9 whatever letters long. That just means everybody uses the same password everywhere. They pick one password, they use it everywhere. So that means when I hack your Netflix account, I hack everything else. I hack your email, I hack your corporate, I hack everything else. Not every time. Most of you guys probably don't do that. Hopefully.
Our password in an Excel file, not a text file.
That's all good. You write them backwards, right? Just
do it in Dropbox. That's the safe place.
Public drive, baby.
So, very effective technique. That's why it's very popular right now. That's why everybody's talking about it. It's because it's effective. It's effective because if you, if you get somebody's email, username, password, usually that's the keys to the kingdom. If I have your email, I can reset all of your other passwords most likely. I can reset your PayPal, your credit card, a lot of things. So malware. Malware is, usually if you have malware, the game is over. By the time you get malware somewhere, that's usually the end game for every attempt of hacking is to install some kind of a executable, or maybe not even install it, but have a way, use like buffer overflow to execute some code space in whatever application that does whatever you want it. Most of the time, and viruses are no longer really the motivation behind all that, because people don't like to just cripple your computer for nothing. They want to get something back out of it. And you got to realize, why do hackers want to install malware? What is the reason that somebody can possibly would want to put something on my tablet right here? It's got no credit card information or anything like that. If you encrypt it and ask me for $15,000, I'm probably not going to give them to you. So you did all that work for nothing. If you ask somebody else to come and encrypt my laptop, they'll probably charge me $1,000 to do that, as a service, but they'll do it for free, and I didn't get paid for it. So why else would somebody want to hack me as my home computer or something like that? Well, there are other ways that they can make money. Most of the time, it's to make money. Things like clickjacking. So if you're not familiar with what that is a lot of our advertisers out there will pay out depending on who clicks on what ad. And if I take control over 20,000 computers out on the internet, and I can make him click on something behind the scenes that the user doesn't know about it, I can generate some money. So that's one way that the hackers would do it. Data jacking. That's, again, if somebody essentially encrypts or takes away my data and said you can have it back for this amount of money. That's usually focused towards the corporate world. Somebody that's actually going to pay for it. So again, the malware, usually by the time you get to malware, the game is over. You lost. Denial of service or distributed denial of service. And in my mind, the distributed denial of service is really a lazy man's way denial of service, because every application out there, when it was architectured and put together and deployed, has a maximum threshold limit that it will be able to handle. So I don't care who it is, even if it's Netflix. As a matter of fact, most of you guys, log into Netflix at night, and then there's a little bar down there that says, sorry, we can't show you your title right now, log in later, or what have you. Again, it's because something has happened, it's reached its capacity. So every application out there will reach its capacity at some point when it comes to clients. All you have to do is give it more clients that it's capable of, and that's your denial of service. So again, usually the reason for denial of service is you can't make money on it except for doing something like stock market. Do a sell short. And then see that the company went offline maybe before there's some kind of big event, and then the stock plunges, and then you make some money off of that. So that's mostly the only reason why that's even there. Because of that, it's not very popular. So again, if you're not in a in a stock market, if you're not a public company, you don't really have any services that would benefit somebody when they take him down. Why would they take him down? Again, it's not a sure way to say whether or not it's going to happen.
Well, hacktivists attacked Visa and MasterCard when they decided not to accept money donations for what's his name, the fellow who did the WikiLeaks.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, they were donating to his legal defense fund, but then Visa and MasterCard decided they're not going to allow those transactions. So the hacktivists performed a denial of service attack on their company.
Perfect example.
So that's not monetary. That's
You're right.
A different kind of motivation.
I'm glad you said that because it's on my slide coming up.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So no, you're absolutely right. The bottom line is if you're a big financial company like Visa, people are going to hack you, if not even for any of that. They might do it for glory. They might do it to say, I took down Visa, and that's my, that's my calling card now. So again, once you get to that level, absolutely, you have to look at those as a potential logic threats that will come your way for no reason other than, just that. Identity spoofing. So an identity spoofing can either be, I'm trying to pretend to be somebody else when I send you something so that you reply to that someone else, and that's usually a way for me. So if you think about something like a regular HTTPS session, and that might not be but anyways, there's a lot of other scenarios like that. In a HTTPS session, in order for me to open a socket, since the knock it's 3 packets, then I send an SSL hello, which is about 200 bytes. You're going to reply with your certificates, you're going to reply with your chain, which is about 2,000 bytes. So if I orchestrated a way for me to send 200 bytes to you, and then you send in 2,000 bytes to somebody that's then somebody else, then I'm using your resources to send to somebody else. So again, that's one way to do it. Another identity spoofing technique is just you becoming somebody else. Either becoming a DHCP server, which again, if you're a DHCP server and a client plugs in and you're the one that says, here's your default gateway, here's your DNS server, you own it. That means game is over. Everything he wants to do, he's going to ask you how to do it. Same thing, DNS server. I can become, if I go in there and figure out how to advertise 4.4.4.4 to you, as a level 3 DNS server, chances are I own half of that world that comes to them, and I can tell them, hey, when you go to google.com, you come to me, and I have my own personal google.com that's going to... That's right. So those are, again, and the reason why I'm going through that list is to get you in the mindset of why things hack, why people hack, what they hack, and how do they do it. Before you can architect a mitigation technique against it, you have to understand what's relevant and what am I susceptible to. So the list continues. Watering hole attacks. Does anybody know what that means? So usually it's very, very clever. So in order for me, and it's one of those things to where I don't try to hack the hardest place. Like again, if I'm trying to get on Visa's network, I'm not going to go and try there and mess with their Wi-Fi or trying to hit their websites.
Is it Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi.
Oh, Wi-Fi. Oh, okay.
No, I shouldn't mess with that Wi-Fi either.
They might be doing this later.
What I'll do is everybody's out on Facebook saying what they do and where they go, and if they go to Jake's Burger Bar and hang out here and whatever, and they come over here and they listen to me talk, I'm better off hacking this place, or I'm better off hacking some bowling website that you log into, and then injecting something there so when you go to it, that's how I get something on your computer. So that's usually a watering hole. Means I'm not hacking you because you're too hard. I'm hacking something where you're going to be. That's easier. That same thing with your house. Again, it's not something that I would hack in the enterprise space. I would rather just drive down to your house and do it right there. It's a lot easier. Well, you're right. So, OpenDNS is not going to stop you there because usually, Joe's wire is not going to be on any kind of watch list for Umbrella or anything like that. But the way that you would mitigate that is you would essentially not allow corporate laptops to go anywhere else where it doesn't belong. So it's very, very rigid technique, but that's the only one you got.
Secure VPNs.
Right. So you would enforce. Anytime you launch your. Even so, if you run through VPN, yes, you're going through corporate network, and then you're going through their firewalls and all that, which has a more likely chance to detect something going wrong. So yes, absolutely. If you funnel it through some other network.
Now they're marketing secure VPNs for home office users too.
Right, and they should absolutely. As a matter of fact, it depends it depends whether or not I care if you do something to my laptop. If it has no data on it and my username, the only thing it does is unlocks this laptop. As an enterprise, I might not care if you have it. I mean, I care if you have it. I'm going to reset it. I'm going to re-image it. So I just need to be able to detect it, and that's all I care about. So in order for me to re-image it and change the username and password, it costs me an hour of an engineer's time. It doesn't cost me $10 million of some kind of anomaly detection, firewalls and what have you. So fake wireless access point, pretty self-explanatory. You go somewhere, I can park next to your house, look at what your SSID is, broadcast the same one. Hopefully you'll connect to me. Obviously, if I leave it open without any passwords, it should set off some kind of red flag in your mind. Well, in your mind as a security personnel, but not in regular Joe Schmo's mind. Especially if I do some kind of denial of service on your regular Wi-Fi. That way, you double click on it, nothing happens. You see another one pop up with the same SSID. You double click on that, and then you have internet. All right, you won, right? But not really. So again, a lot of it, and as you can see me talk about these things, a lot of it has to do with social engineering. And the reason why that is because that's the weakest link. The technology, the security technology has gotten to the point where it's very good. But if you look at some of this, social engineering techniques, then they become very effective. So man in the middle, again, has been around for forever to the passive. As in, I can listen to what you're sending. So if I can become your wireless access point, or if I get on the same network as you, and I'm able to send an ARC reply to you, to where I'm telling you I'm the default gateway, I'm telling the default gateway I'm you, and now I'm becoming the man in the middle for that. And then I can either just listen to everything you're saying, or I can manipulate it. When I see a DNS request, I can send you something back that's different. So again, that's that's something. As a matter of fact, a lot of people will look at it and say, I don't care if I have a man in the middle. I use HTTPS only. Everything's encrypted. So what did they see this encrypted traffic? There is some issues with that as well. So for example, DNS, and I pick on DNS a lot just because it's usually like a key to the kingdom. Is I can see every service that you're trying to get to out there. So if you have AWS services, I can see you resolve to that. I can see you logging in. So I don't see you logging in, and all that in the HTTP, but I can see you resolving the DNS name. So when I try to craft my phishing emails to you, I'm going to send you, hey, your AWS user account is no longer active because you've been really bad at something and you're probably going to get fired. So you should probably click on it and install this agent or something along those lines, right? So I have more information than I had before. Therefore, it's a security vulnerability.
We have a dossier on you. We got Fusion GPS. We're going to blackmail you.
That's right. So password attacks. As a matter of fact, that's another thing. What I don't like, the make your password, really, really crazy looking and stuff like that, is because usually, do you know why they do that? It's not because of brute force attacks. I mean, nobody in their right mind today should expose a username and password field to somebody that can send 10 million attempts before it logs in. It will lock it way before then. The reason why you have strong passwords is when they get hacked and they dump their database of encrypted passwords, then they can do hashing tables and other attacks.
SQL injection.
Well, once they already have all the encrypt, so like usually what they will do is the way that everybody keeps your password is they'll do like an MD5 hash, and that's a easy way to do it. Do an MD5 hash of your password, store that in a database. Then when you log in, when you provide your password, they do an MD5 hash on that, and they compare those two and see if they're the same. That way, they don't actually have your password, but they can still validate if you're logging in correctly. Well, the issue with that is if I'm a hacker and I hack their database and I got all that MD5 hashes, now I can do a brute force attack on that, to where I can say, what's the MD5 hash of A? It's that. Is it that? No. Of B? Is that? Is it that? No. And then, you go millions and millions, and that's what that prevents for. So by the time you do your password, pretty much what you're saying is, when you guys get hacked, it'll be harder for hackers to get my password. From that perspective. So you're already, setting yourself up to fail in that perspective. I mean, I'm not saying it's totally invalid. I just think that if you're trying to weigh the benefit of creating a really, really hard password versus people having to write it down or put it in a notepad or doing it somewhere else just because it's hard for them to remember, it's easier for me to get into their laptop and look at the password.txt file and get all that. And I don't have to go through the decryption and brute force and hash tables and all that. So now you think you're more secure by creating this fancy password, but it's usually easier for me to get those because then they're more readily available on the end user's systems.
So how about some of the password keys, like key holders, like LastPass or something like that? Mm-hmm. Does that slow you down any?
No, well, yeah, if you got some kind of key holder, then that will encrypt that locally, and then the only time it decrypts it is when it puts it in your clipboard, and then you can paste it, whatever. So no, that's if you use that, then obviously that's better than having it in Notepad. But the thing is, it's hard for everybody that's non-technical to be able to use that. So a lot of times there are people, you got to realize, IT staff is only maybe 10% of your employees. Everybody's got a password. Everybody's got to get on the network. So you got to think common people. You can't think all IT staff. So yeah, as myself, I'll use some kind of password.
But I'm after those admin passwords.
Well, and that's the thing is, if I have. Yeah.
I'm after yours.
Yeah, you're right.
I would argue actually that LastPass and a lot of these password database solutions aren't hard for the common user to use at all. I would argue that it's actually, if they can log into something with a password or passphrase, then they should be fine. I would say that that's not true at all in this current state that we're in. I mean, we have complete morons that can use LastPass all the time and are relatively secure. So.
As long as they don't have a password in
LastPass, yeah. Well, it's like 10 minutes of training with any employees. You can up that password security even if you don't have a centralized cyber archetype solution in place.
Absolutely. So that's a valid statement, and that would be a way that you would fix that issue. Is you do a training, you say use this tool. Absolutely. But that again, that takes. If you're talking about a company of 500 in the United States, that's great. But if you're talking about a national company with 20,000 employees and 100 different languages, now it takes a lot of money to do that. So it's again, you got to weigh your benefits there. Yes.
Do you have a specific recommendation? Because you're saying you're kind of against the very complex because people tend to reuse it.
Right.
So do you have a specific recommendation and not use any passwords that you give to users, like a standard password and the domain name or something, which automated attacks aren't going to get. It's not a good password, but automated attacks will.
Right. So yes, good question. My recommendation would actually, and I said that I'm not okay with it. I'm okay with complex passwords. I'm not okay with you requesting to change them every 30 days. That is a really dumb idea from that perspective. Because again, the what you're protecting with that complex password is when they get hacked, they're gonna do the hash table on whatever, and then they can get that. Are you saying you're expecting to get hacked every 30 days? I mean, that's plenty to fail, absolutely. So,
well, there's also the thinking that even if you use complex passwords, if it's only 10 or 12 characters long, they can attack the hash all day long. But if you use something that's 30 to 40 characters long, it becomes insurmountable the amount of attempts they have to make to crack that hash.
Yeah.
So we'll use something like, well, my moose likes to wear purple underwear in the morning. It's all regular words, but it's a very long password. You can remember it, and it's damn hard to crack.
Yeah, it's just a math problem at that point.
It's a math problem. Right?
It's you're saying
the longer the number of characters.
Yeah, but then if you don't again, you gotta realize the power's off. So
you use factor authentication is even more of that.
Right, the multi-factor authentication comes.
Right, multiple factor,
It's exactly what I was talking about. That is user, user ability to log in with ease versus, versus security versus comfort, really. And it's always a trade-off with that. But yeah, to your point is, you got 26 characters, upper and lower. That's 52. Now, if you start to use numbers, that's 10 more. If you start to use whatever, that's 10 more. So for every character, you got to guess that much more. So then you can put it into a calculation to say, if I only use this. But the thing is, your hacker has to know your security policy. If they don't know your security policy, they're gonna assume the worst.
They have to assume all possible characters.
Right.
So the more characters you have.
Yeah, the more characters you have, the theoretically, yes, the more characters you have, you only have to have like 1 or 2 more characters, and you don't have to do the upper, lower, and numbers and special characters. You just add the length to it. So very good point.
I actually see break glass password you use. Those kind of break glass password for high privilege accounts. So basically, you put a request for a break glass password, and you have to change that password within 24 hours. Otherwise, this account will be closed.
Right.
And that's only reserved for high security, very secure accounts.
Right. Yeah, break the glass is a common practice.
Have you heard of break glass?
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
Break glass.
It's called break glass account. So basically, it's only reserved for high security, high privilege accounts. And then somebody on the team, so only a group of people have access to send a request for a new password, and you have to change that password within 24 hours, and then that account will get closed. So each time you need to do something using that account, you need to break the glass, and then.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
CyberArk does that. That's what it.
Yes.
Yeah. But also, you also got to worry about auditing. Who gave them the access?
If you own the breaking glass, like that's just like your password vault in a corporate or enterprise setting, that is now just moving where I'm going to be targeting, basically. But if you do it right, it makes it harder, a whole lot harder than what Microsoft has managed to come up with over 40 years. But
as an attacker,
Say again? Right, absolutely, always. Absolutely, that's always the case. But anyways, I've seen, usually in my experience, break the glass open envelope password usually is local admin. That if your authentication server fails, your TACAX, your AD, your radius, or whatever, you still have to log in locally, right? Because obviously then if I attack your radius server, then hey, you're locked out of everything, right? So once you log into the local admin, that should be the break the glass password, and then that password should roll out to something completely new on all the systems and be pushed in some automatic fashion. Anyways, let's continue. Oh, buffer overflow, everybody here should be familiar a little bit with what it is, but it's essentially how you execute code in anywhere. So if you think about any application, so like PDF, for example, PDF will, you know, it's unlike text file where you essentially open it up and the only thing your computer has to do is read the characters and display it on your screen. PDF is a little bit more complex than that. The actual instructions that tell it how to put things on the screen are a lot more complex. It can bring in things from pictures, it can bring in things from HTML, it can, you know, there's a lot of different protocols and formats that come into building that output. So if some way I can write some variable in there that is longer than the system is expecting it to be, that essentially that overflow of that variable can go in the next memory space. That next memory space could be an executable space, which means when your program executes, the very next thing you do is this. So I just written something in executable space and I tell it to execute it. So that's buffer overflow. That's essentially everything you see out on the internet. Everything else gets you to this, and this gets you elevated access or lets you execute something on a system. And this is very complex. You know, there's a lot of you can't do it with unknowns. You have to know exactly what system, you have to know exactly how it's compiled, you have to have the source code, you have to have the same copy of it locally, you have to test it, validate that it works, and then you can do this attack on exactly the same system out there or exactly the same program. So it's, you know, it's effective, but you have to have a lot of known data points about who you're trying to attack. Which, you know, that's why they say don't post, like if you have a Apache server version, whatever, you know, sometimes they'll put it in the HTTP headers, exactly what version and all that stuff. That tells the hacker, here's my version, here's my server. So if you've known some kind of vulnerabilities that you can do against that, please go ahead and do it against me. So then, as an attacker out there on the internet, I just say, go to this website. Does it have this version? Nope, this one, this one, this one. I can have a laundry list of websites. I can just, you know, I can have a bot that sits there and types random things in Google, and then just randomly clicks on every website until it finds what I'm looking for. Again, that's usually, obviously, that's not a targeted attack. You're not gonna get Visa that way unless you get a list of their IP address space and hit every single publicly available website.
You might get Equifax that way.
Yeah.
Right, they got again.
But that's you know, so that's different breaches and tactics that I was talking about, and these are the popular ones. Obviously, you know, the reason why they call it hacking is because hackers use tools to their, you know, the programs, the tools, their brain in a way it's not intended to get a result that they want. So it's not something you can predict. Anybody out there can come up with something new and cool that we don't even know about and do it and not tell anybody about it, and then 10 years later it becomes public or what have you. So again, these are the popular ones. So a lot of times this is when you get attacked, it's going to be one of those or a combination of those or some different order of those. So, and to your point, I told you I had a slide on that. Why do hackers hack? So absolutely, there are different ways or different reasons, and you got to realize those reasons, and you got to think, can I be a solution to one of those reasons? And you know, hobby, you know, that's your glory and power, and I like to do it, and I like to brag about it. To steal or make money, you know, obviously, or to steal something from you, so whatever you have, maybe intellectual property, maybe something you can resell, or to make money some way. Again, that's
those people are called criminals.
Yeah, you're right.
They're the bad guys.
Well, just because you're making money doesn't mean you're a criminal, because you can. You're right. Security test. So that's all the whiteheads out there. That's how they get paid. You know, idealism. So that's what you're talking about. Is when you know, the whole scenario that you brought up, that Visa and MasterCard got hacked. because they wouldn't accept payments, that would fall under that category. Is because
they were motivated by money. They're motivated.
Yeah, they're motivated by some kind of an idea. It's not really even political, because I think in my mind, political comes more of a. So it depends how you classify it in your mind. In my mind, I classify political as United States versus China versus Russia. That's to me political agenda. To where you hack for international, gain of some sort.
How is this different from having service providers or so giving you 10 cents more tax for no apparent reason?
It's not.
It's an exploitation.
Yeah, it's you go to another one, I guess, or you. As a matter of fact, here's a hack for all of you. If you call your service provider and you complain and threaten them, they're usually half your bill anytime. Not well. A lot of time you have to actually have a susceptible backup plan.
So you're telling me I have to have a plan B?
Yeah, you gotta say, I gotta cancel my services today. I'm very unhappy. It's too expensive. I have a friend that told me he signed up for the very same thing and he's paying half of what I'm paying. And usually they'll give you. Yeah, that's why my connection at my house is 1 gig and I'm paying $60 a month for it.
Be careful about that. I've had friends do that, like you just said.
Yeah.
And they went, okay, and they turned it off.
Right, that's why I say you gotta have a backup plan. You can't have all your eggs in that basket. It depends who you get, right? And then you just call back and you say, why is my service off? I don't know what happened, And then you get a different person and you state your case then, and maybe something else will happen.
Somebody was spoofing the last call.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't me. All right, so that's your Whitehead, Blackhead breakdown. Usually most everybody's there. There's some overlapping and security.
The gray area.
Yeah, the gray area. So there's always a gray area in between there. And sometimes, and if you know your ITIL type of methodology, just because you're a Blackhead doesn't mean you can also be a Whitehead, on the side or in different time or a
That's
different.
the definition of a gray hat, though.
Yeah.
I personally don't believe in. Gray hat is like saying you're a good cop because you only sell drugs off duty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll argue against that and say that you can't be a gray hat due to the poorly written CFAA that we have in the United States, in which legitimate research is considered illegal.
Yeah.
I'll stop talking.
Okay.
That's bad in a lot of ways. Depends what state you're in.
And very last thing you have to consider. So far, we haven't start talking about security architecture. We just talked about who, why, when, and why would they do it. And then the very last thing is actually very important is what should I protect? Again, that's something that I alluded to in the beginning. Is you should never say, yeah, I want to be 100% secure. Just give me everything you got. I want to be protected against everything. That's usually too expensive and it's too complex and it's too inconvenient to all the end users that you might have. So whatever took your employees to do 3 hours before is going to take them 6 hours now. So it's not just the cost of the infrastructure, the cost of the products, the cost of deployment of those products. Now you hinder an operation. So that's
why do companies do it in the first place if it costs so much?
Because it's better than the alternative. Sometimes. That's why I'm saying, is it better than the alternative? That's the question you have to ask is, what is the outcome? Like technically, the Cisco's and them, they're always like to do the ransomware and, you can get hacked and then they hold you hostage and then, you got to pay $20,000 to get your, that's a bargain. $20,000, really? I mean, your service contract on a firewall for a month is going to be $20,000. So who's doing ransomware then, right? So it's
Be the ransom guy.
yeah, just put that security budget into your ransomware budget, and you'll be all right.
Well, and you'll make money by turning off your firewall.
That's right. Yeah, saving electricity, saving engineers.
Ransomware is less than your firewall.
Yeah,
so you're good to go.
Yeah, it's just kind of costly. I mean. Come on, like how often do you get ransomware? Maybe once a year. You got to pay $15,000. That's not bad, Anyway, so what I'm getting at is what you have, is it worth, what's the alternative? How much does it cost you? Does it cost you in monetary ways? Does it cost you in reputation? Does it cost you in customers? All those you have to take in account. So example that I have here is if you are a media streaming service to the internet, so that's your, I don't know, I'll keep
Blockbuster.
there you go, thank you, Blockbuster.com. I wanted to keep the name brands out of there. And then you have, your world is or at least the United States is your clients everywhere. You send, 1 terabits per second out to the internet. You got a bunch of routers on there, you got a bunch of servers. The only thing those servers do is they go to some other media server, they cache the content, and then they send it out to whoever's requesting it. So and they might even not send it out to the user. They might send it out to other content delivery network, caching engine somewhere else, or what have you, right? So you got a lot of servers. You got a lot of speed. You gotta think streaming takes a lot of bandwidth, and most of the time it's also carried out over HTTP or HTTPS today because. Well, it's just easy to pass through firewalls and all that stuff with that, and then they don't have to mess with users not getting their service. So they'll package it in HTTPS and they'll stream it. So how do you protect something like that? You have a data center that's got 1 terabits per second going out to the internet, and usually in modern data centers, the formula that they usually say for whatever your traffic is, northbound, southbound, you got 10 times that going east-west. Because again, the application, you're going to hit the one media server down here is going to talk to this guy and this guy and this guy and so on, so that the traffic east and west becomes even more so 10 times full. So if you have a data center like that, how do you protect it? Do you go and throw firewall in every link, throw virtual firewalls in there, protect absolutely everything? Now you're talking about 11 terabytes per second worth of firewalls in your infrastructure. It's going to cost you probably $50 million just in infrastructure alone. And you got to say, what happens if one of those servers get hacked? Or actually, let me take a step back and say, what are you going to do on those firewalls? Those firewalls are going to say, permit HTTPS, deny everything else. Let's just say you want to be as strict as that, right? What is HTTP? I mean, the firewall is going to look at the header. It's going to say, okay, HTTPS, get, post, whatever. Great, go in. So now you're essentially inspecting nothing. Your firewall doesn't. It stops everything else, but an access list can do that. I can do some layer 2 ASIC stuff.
Trusted relationship between servers?
I'm sorry?
Trusted relationship between servers?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But what I'm trying to get to right now is when you firewall, even though you put them in there, they're not effective. They're not really doing anything because the only thing that's open to the internet is HTTP. So when a user comes in there and does HTTP GET, POST, and whatever, they're still getting through. They're still getting the server. Any exploits that comes within the HTTP protocol is still open for me to explore. So now we're not talking about just firewall. We're talking about some kind of web application firewall, some more in the application space. So do I put those in there? And again, what do I do with that? So but then when I get down to it is even when you get all the way down to the server and then if somebody does get on the server and take control over it, there's not really anything on there that they can steal or sell. So the only thing they can do is they can claim that they got in. So again, you got to think, what does that cost me? Do I have to announce it? Can they announce it? Something like that.
They can make everyone watch party videos.
That's right. they can do that. But yeah, I mean, then the question becomes.
There's a solution.
Yeah, but then the question becomes, do I really want to stop them from hacking, or am I okay with just detecting them when they did hack? So if you detect them after they hack, you cut it off. You cut off the system, or you cut off the whole data center. If you're Blockbuster.com and you stream it to the United States, you got 10 of those data centers. You got to say, I got to be able to pull a plug on this one. It's out of business.
And if they've been there for 273 days, they've already got it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times the number of days before an attacker is detected is well into the 3 digits.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah. Not only did they get into their infrastructure, they got into their firmware repository and updated their point of sale service. So it was.
Oh, really? They could inject firmware in there?
Yeah.
But in cases like that, to detect the anomaly should be very, very easy because every single system in here is doing exactly the same thing. They're all running the same application. We're just talking about big scale. We're not talking about thousands of applications doing random things that nobody knows anything. We're talking about data center with a single purpose, and that purpose is this. And if anything ever deviates, I can literally just run a cron job on there that says, if new processes start, let me know about it, you know, or something along those lines. Or if new traffic starts sending out of the system that's not HTTP, whatever, let me know about it, and I know something happened.
You see, communications back to Mother Russia, let me know about it.
That's right. Do you guys want to do the quiz? Yay, let's do it. Oh. Now let me go through the actual enterprise network. So this is a pretty typical little enterprise. We got 2 branches, 2 data center, we got some cloud services. What do we secure in there? So all those things are the things that you can do in this network. The first thing is the wireless network. So again, in wireless network, and obviously you got your wireless, RF survey, you got your access points placed wherever you want. You selected your, encryption and everything else. The one thing that I, look at it from the infrastructure security is where do you place your radius server? Does it have a secure channel going to your controller or to your access points? Well, the gotcha there is, again, I can do identity spoofing on your radius server if it's on the same network as everything else, and technically I can take over and put my own radius server. I do have to know your pre-shared key for the radius encryption and all that stuff. But again, that's one thing you have to keep in mind there. Wired access. So that's, again, when somebody plugs into your port in anywhere. So one thing that I've seen a lot is either a phone desk lady, or sometimes there'll be an IP phone outside of the building. It's IP phone, guess what? It's got a network access. That means when you put that thing off, take out the port, you potentially can have access to the network, depending whether or not they have that one.
An internet phone, office phone, is that pivot point?
Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah, so if you have a...
Like a Cisco VOB phone and that...
Oh man, you're cut off, man.
Point phone, okay, at a desk, a Cisco phone at a desk is the pivot point?
Yeah, it depends. So it depends where if that phone is sitting in the lobby and there is no front desk lady, or if there is a front desk lady, I can just sit next to the phone, unplug the cable, plug into my laptop. I'm on a network. So yeah, it's just anywhere where a phone needs a network access, I can get network access unless you have mitigation techniques against it.
Think of it like a copy machine. How easy it is to just fuck with that. Dropbox, Mac spoofing, bam.
Yeah.
It's a fucking phone. They all have shitty firmware. It's terrible. So it is a pivot point.
Then we got user access. So user access is more, now you're not talking about who's plugging in and whether or not they have access. It's when they plugged in and they do have access, what do they have access to? So now you're talking about dropping people on different VLANs and putting those VLANs behind firewalls according to their username, and then deploying a certain policy, or downloading some kind of dynamic access list directly to ASICs on your switches. So all those techniques are available to you that you can do in that space as well. And obviously you got your VDI, which is great. That means I don't care what happens in my branch. When you log in and you're using any kind of meaningful information, you're actually accessing a remote computer somewhere else. And then you got to train your employees to follow all this, obviously. So anomaly detection, again, that's your antivirus that you can deploy on all the systems. There's DNS monitoring services. Again, DNS is usually a low-hanging fruit. It doesn't cost a lot to monitor it. And I say it doesn't cost a lot. Cisco and HP and everybody will try to charge you a lot to do it, but it doesn't cost a lot in terms of technology to do it. And then there's the next generation firewalls that actually have anomaly detections and all that stuff built in. Then you have the inter-site access. So again, when you leave your branch and you go to another branch, do you just allow anybody to go with no restriction? Or what can you do there? You can have one firewall. So it's an edge firewall, perimeter firewall that you put at every branch. You usually have those in the data center anyway, so you can place the same thing at there. You can force all your traffic to go to the data center first, no matter where you go, and then make it go through a firewall there. And there's some techniques to do that, either with routing or otherwise. There is different overlays that you can create, and that's popular in financial sector that Don and I and everybody's seen. That you have more secure network and a less secure network, and they overlap each other. And then there's a computer that's locked in a room somewhere in the branch office that's more secure than everything else. And then there's the SD-WAN solution that actually can pick and choose and combine the different different ways to do all of the options up above.
And they have the honey network that traps your ID information and knows who you are.
Yeah.
And you think you got in.
Well, and that's a very, I didn't actually, I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't put it anywhere on there, but it's a very valid thing, that if you have a honeypot set up somewhere, that's a very good detection technique. That's essentially a free, you just monitor everything comes in and out of it, and that's as good as any anomaly detection you'll do, as long as it's available to the internet and you just re-image it every, especially now with containers today, you can spin up a honeypot every 20 seconds, right? That brings it to the previous state. Why not?
Virtual containers.
Right. So in the data center, what do we have? We have DMZ. DMZ is a traditional way that says this is a more secure zone, this is less secure zone. And then DMZ is usually the less secure zone that offers services out to the internet, and then there's a bunch of firewalls that has to go through to get to and from the DMZ. Microsegmentation is another way that the data centers are treated. Is every single server on in your data center is treated as its own server and its own DMZ. So you have a firewall rule in and out of each one of those, and you have ACI with Cisco, you have NSX and other products that will allow you to put firewall rules on each and every server. Multi-tenancy, again, that's something you see in usually service provider space, but it's becoming more dominant in the enterprise space, where you have business unit by business unit multi-tenancy. And then to get from one business unit to another business unit, then you either have to go through a firewall or you have no connectivity whatsoever. And then you got your either web application firewall or some other application understanding firewall. Like again, so there are tools out there that will let you monitor SQL connections and monitor for things specific like SQL injection. That you don't have to patch every single server and do that. You just have to have a system in the middle that sits there and monitors that. Same thing with web application firewall. Again, if your website, the only thing it does is get and post is the only two methods, then if somebody does delete and put and whatever, there's like 20 others that I can never commit to memory. They have no business doing that, so that can be blocked on that firewall. So inside the DMZ, there is different things that happen as well. So there's your next generation firewall that's usually going to have subscription to whatever provider, so whether or not it's Checkpoint or Cisco, Palo Alto, whatever, they all offer some kind of subscription where it will look in real time and see if whatever's happening in your network, not just some kind of anomaly ID or what have you, some kind of behavior that's malicious. And then they have sandboxing services as well. Anytime you send any kind of file over, they'll take that file, they'll send it off to the server, they'll spin up its own virtual environment, they'll execute it, they'll runtime forward, they'll runtime back, to see what the effect of that execution is, they write it down, and then report it, as a hash of that file and then whether or not that file was malicious or not. So then, even if you were allowed to go through your network and then they did all that, and retroactively they can say, okay, this file is not malicious, here's all the systems that are affected, you have those kind of services available to you. Then your INET DDoS protection, so again, that's a way that you make a contract with a service provider that you get your internet pipe from, that says, because usually by the time the internet traffic got to you, if you got 1 gig pipe and somebody sent you a gig's worth of traffic, whether or not you block it is irrelevant. Your pipe is full, so now you have to have some kind of a way to stop it before it gets there. And those are the techniques you make with your provider, to where you can signal them, block this IP address, I don't want anything coming from there. So there are tools like Arbor Networks and everybody else that will allow you to make those kind of contracts, go through the scrubbing centers in those facilities, and they'll be able to do that for you. You got your email security, SMTP proxy, that's essentially both same things. It's, when you get that phishing email, there's a system there that can tell you whether or not it's probably bad. Everybody deploys those as well. And, remote access. And the last thing is the cloud. How do you secure the cloud? You got to have a completely different mindset in the cloud because, well, for the most part, except for this very first thing. If you want to treat your cloud as your data center, most of the time all the same virtual cloud, or most of the same technologies and appliances you have in a data center have a virtual appliance version that you can deploy in a similar fashion in a cloud. So you can technically mimic what you have going on in your data center, but that's usually a wrong way to do it, because cloud is not meant for you to create platform as a service, or even infrastructure as a service. When you go to the cloud, you got to embrace it. You got to go, use more services that are not going to make you do the same things you did before, only on somebody else's gear. Usually that just means you're shifting your cost model differently, but everything else stays the same. You're not really going up with the times. But there are cloud monitoring services like CloudLock, for example, that will go and tell you if people logging into your services that have no business logging in, they're dropping files that potentially have information that you don't want leaving your company, and so on. And then RBAC. Rigid RBAC policy is #1 policy that security should review when going to the cloud, because usually you create an account and there are 20 people that can do absolutely everything on that account, which means if I have that access, if I have that username and password of that one person, I can go delete all your systems, all your backups, all your everything. I can essentially just close the account and say game over, and then it's up to you and provider to figure out how to fix that. Yes.
How do you implement RBAC's policy on Unix account?
On what?
Unix account?
Well, RBAC policy is more of a practice, to where it says when I create an account and it's for this person, the only thing that person will be able to do is this and this alone. And then if they want any more access than that, then I would rather them come back to me and says I need access to this. And so on and so forth. So make it as strict as possible and then give them more access. But that's not usually the practice in today's world. I mean, on Linux account, obviously you can, and I'm not a Linux admin, so, or on Unix, same thing. So on Unix account, you would essentially, again, it depends what you have access to. Do you have access to sudo? Who has sudo access? Were they allowed to execute a sudo and so on? I mean, you can restrict it to very small set first, and then when they need something else, then they have to state their case why they need that. And most of the time when they state their case, they don't get it anyway.
You're setting up syslog forwarder for Linux and Unix systems when you're doing this.
Anyways, and that's, I believe, is the end of my slides. This is IOFIT and everything we do. And we got, thank you, questions.
Any more questions for Tim?
Very nice.
What's that?
Very nice presentation.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you. I'll be down here probably having a couple more drinks. If you guys want to hang back and chat, I'm up for that.
Hey guys, thanks for coming.